Moroccan invasion was just one factor in Timbuktu's decline. By then, the shifting focus of European trade from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic was already depressing the fortunes of the whole region.
West Africa was always going to lose the battle. Why? Because the demand for African gold fell at the beginning of the 15th century. Europe was then buying its gold and precious metals from America. The markets were getting poorer, and all that played a big part in affecting West Africa.
The Moroccan invasion never became a full-scale occupation. The long years of the late 18th and 19th centuries saw the whole Niger region embroiled in a period of anarchy, a series of violent struggles between Sufi brotherhoods, each pushing their own brand of fundamentalist Islam, destroyed all hopes of a return to the stable days of the Songhai Empire. Reaching into this heightened atmosphere were the first tentacles of European colonization. One of the consequences of that colonization was how Africa's cultures and traditions would be viewed and treated. Europeans knew the Niger flowed inland, but thought it might be a branch of the Nile or the Congo, or might empty into a yet undiscovered inland sea. In 1805, the Royal African Society sent Mungo Park on the second of two expeditions to chart the Niger's true course and find Timbuktu. Who better to tell Park's story than a latter-day explorer sturdily cast in the Park mould? His great-great-grandnephew, Doug Park.
My ancestor was Mungo Park, and he was the first European supposedly to lay eyes on the Niger River. And he wrote about it, and after his first journey, he became famous for that. The second time he went to the Niger River, he actually made it quite a bit further, and he brought a lot more people along with him. Mungo Park did make it as far as Timbuktu, was never actually able to get to the city. So somewhere around where we are right now, perhaps, he had sailed past. Unfortunately, he was a few hundred miles up the river from Timbuktu. He was ambushed by a number of natives who had been following him for a while, and he jumped into the river and drowned. The local trading societies didn't want the Europeans to find out where the cities actually were, and so those people protecting these middle Niger cities were very aggressive, and so it wasn't easy for any early traveler in this area.
The first British explorer to reach Timbuktu was Alexander Gordon Laing, another Scot. Being half Scottish myself as well as West African, I can't help but wonder sometimes whether the lure of Timbuktu isn't in my blood in more ways than one. Laing was a British Army major who made the sartorial error of travelling in uniform and was taken as a spy. He was severely wounded by Tuareg tribesmen on his way into Timbuktu in 1826. He was allowed to recuperate for a month, only to be murdered by the Tuareg a week into his return journey. A few years later, Frenchman René Caillet reached Timbuktu and survived the journey home. Caillet disguised himself in local robes and spoke enough Arabic to pass as a Muslim, and he was singularly unimpressed with Timbuktu. The anarchic 19th century closed abruptly as French colonization quashed any future hope of self-rule. One of the briefest periods in Timbuktu's history, colonial rule had a profound effect. What Timbuktu scholars had failed or perhaps been disinclined to do, the French achieved in decades. Compulsory schooling in French spread literacy across the whole social spectrum. However, the imposition of the French educational system resulted in the loss of the classical Arabic required to read the manuscripts, leaving Timbuktu's written legacy accessible only to a minority to this day. The existence of the manuscript on its own is an amazing discovery, but the devil, as they say, is in the detail. What do they tell us about the way people lived here in Timbuktu centuries ago? Already the everyday concerns of ordinary townsfolk are being revealed in a detailed study of records of some of Timbuktu's thousands of surviving fatwas issued over the centuries.
I think all of if you say fatwa, people say it's a death sentence. A fatwa literally means it's a religious verdict. One of the interesting ones on women who got married while married. You have one incident of a woman whose husband traveled. She said to him, well, you're leaving and I need you. And he said, well, if I'm not back within a certain amount of days, you can then divorce yourself. Now, there were no witnesses to this incident, so he comes back later, sometime later, and he finds her married.
Somebody else?
Yes. Many of these women clearly said that, look, I just don't, finances are not the only things that I need. I need your company, I need your emotional support. So if you are not around, I'm not going to, just stay around without a husband.
What was the advice of the muftis in those cases where a woman felt herself to be free to remarry and had done so?
No, they came back and they said that, the second marriage is invalid and she must be returned to the first husband. So all of them seem to agree to that.
So overall, the impression you get of the position of women in that era was what?
Is that they were present, they announced their presence, they had their say. They were not simply sitting at home. There's another manuscript that is not a fatwa, but from there you can see that husbands were always very worried whether they could really satisfy their wives.
So there were some anxious men around in those days?
There are probably many anxious men today around, but certainly overall, erectile dysfunction was an issue. You could see, and the traditional healer, was a very pious Muslim scholar, really saw it as part of his Islamic duty to help his brother who was in distress.
What was the advice given to the husband?
Well,
then?
you take the blood from the comb of a chicken, or of a cock, and use it, either putting it, rubbing it under the feet, or even at times on the penis.
Was it medicine or was it psychology, do you think? Do you think they just knew that if somebody relaxed, things might just get better?
I'm venturing, I'm assuming, maybe they really believed it's going to work,
I always feel like the healers would always say that. But in the 17th century, following Moroccan invasion, Timbuktu scholars began the first rewriting of this part of Africa's history. The Timbuktu tarikhs became a whole new literary and historical genre. The Great Tarikhs are a series of histories of the city and the wider region, written with the express purpose of supporting the existing elite's right to rule within the new Moroccan regime. Their authors drew on written records as well as oral traditions, reinterpreting the past in the light of subsequent events, much as a modern historian might do today. And as such, they need to be weighed carefully.
The disadvantage
we have with the Tariq is a bias in the writing of history, because history is always written for the governing powers to the detriment of those that came before. When you read the Tariq al-Fattaj, you see an argument supporting Songhai's Askia emperors and condemning the Soni. Both are from the same family, but from opposing sides. Therefore, you find this political bias. In the Tariq al-Sudan, you will find this same political bias, and on top of that, an argument for the religion. In the Tariq al-Nisyan, which is the story of the Moroccan dominance in Timbuktu, you find an argument in support of the powers in place at the time.
Ajami was another genre which flowered across the turbulent late 18th and 19th centuries, as some writers attempted to reach a wider audience among the ethnic groups along the Niger. The texts used an adapted Arabic script to write in local African languages. Ajami simply means any language which isn't Arabic. The warring Sufi brotherhoods especially used Ajami to popularize their brands of Islam. But Ajami is important in other respects too. It tells the people's history, with which the Tariqs weren't concerned.
Le texte Ajami
The Ajami text put on paper an oral tradition that was in danger of extinction. We found all sorts in there: poetry, songs, as well as text on history. And sometimes history sings. The official truth is the one you find in the King's Court. But as soon as we go in the street and we see a mother breastfeeding her child, she sings the songs of her people. And that's where the truth is. It's a whole culture of which we don't make the most of today. But we should, because you can't have a comprehensive understanding of African culture without the Ajami text.
Alongside glorious oral traditions, the manuscripts represent an exciting new resource, which the government is doing its best to protect.